What you're about to witness is Judge Frank Caprio's most shocking case ever recorded. And I'm warning you right now, this story will absolutely destroy you emotionally. It was supposed to be just another day in the Providence Municipal Court. The benches were full, the air was buzzing, and people whispered about how lucky they were to see the legendary judge Frank Caprio in person. No one knew that this morning would bring a story so powerful that millions around the world would end up crying and believing in humanity again. The clerk called the next case in a calm voice, Robert Anthony Martinez. Everyone looked toward the door, and there he was. An 84-year-old man slowly walked in, pushing a worn-out shopping cart covered with a green tarp. His steps were weak, his hands shaky, but there was a quiet strength in his eyes, the kind you only see in people who have fought too many battles in life. His jacket was an old, faded military coat. His shoes were patched together with duct tape. The courtroom went silent as everyone realized this man wasn't just another defendant. He looked like someone who had lived through storms that most of us could never survive. When Judge Caprio saw him, he immediately sensed that something was different. This wasn't going to be another simple shoplifting case. This was going to be a story that would change hearts forever. Mr. Martinez, Judge Caprio said gently, "You're charged with shoplifting a loaf of bread valued at $2.89. How do you plead?" Bobby, as everyone would later call him, lifted his head. His voice trembled, but his words were clear. "Guilty, Your Honor. I took the bread. I was hungry, and I had no money." The courtroom stayed quiet. No one could even move. You could feel the pain in the old man's voice, the kind that comes from years of being unseen, unheard, forgotten. Judge Caprio placed his pen down. That simple gesture always meant one thing. He was about to stop being just a judge and start being human. "Mr. Martinez, can you tell me about your situation? Why couldn't you pay for the bread?" Bobby looked around at the crowded courtroom. His tired eyes met the judge's kind gaze. "Your Honor, I've been homeless for 6 years now. I try to work when I can, but at my age, it's not easy. Sometimes I go days without a meal. That day, I just couldn't take it anymore." Judge Caprio leaned forward. "How old are you, Mr. Martinez?" 84, Your Honor," Bobby replied softly. "Same age as you, I believe." Those words hit Judge Caprio like a wave. The same age, two men born the same year. One sitting behind the bench of justice, the other standing in front of it, broken and hungry. You could see emotion wash over the courtroom. A few people lowered their eyes, some wiped away tears. Then Judge Caprio asked gently, "Did you serve our country, Mr. Martinez?" Bobby stood a little straighter, pride flickering through his weary frame. "Yes, Your Honor. United States Marine Corps. Vietnam, 1968 to 1970. 3 tours of duty." The judge's expression softened. You could feel respect fill the room like a warm light. The man standing there wasn't just a homeless thief. He was a veteran, a forgotten hero. And yet, behind that green tarp-covered cart, there was something even deeper, something that would leave everyone speechless. Judge Caprio noticed how Bobby kept one hand on his cart the whole time, guarding it like it held something precious. The judge tilted his head. "Bobby, if you don't mind me asking, what's in the cart?" The question seemed to make the old man nervous. His hand tightened on the handle. "Just personal things, Your Honor. Nothing stolen. Just things that matter to me." Judge Caprio nodded slowly. "I understand. What if it's okay? I'd like to see. Not as a judge, but as someone who truly cares." Bobby hesitated. You could see the struggle on his face. The silence stretched. Finally, he whispered, "People might think I've lost my mind when they see what's in there." Judge Caprio smiled gently. "Son, I've been sitting on this bench for over 30 years. I've seen everything. I don't think you're crazy for caring about something deeply." Bobby took a deep breath, the kind of breath you take when you're about to share your soul. He slowly lifted the green tarp. What the courtroom saw next froze everyone in place. Inside the cart were hundreds of photographs, old letters, worn military documents, dog tags, medals, and a notebook wrapped carefully in plastic. It wasn't garbage. It wasn't junk. It was a lifetime of memories, a traveling memorial built by one man who refused to forget the people who never came home. Judge Caprio stepped closer, his voice barely a whisper. Bobby, are these what I think they are? Tears filled Bobby's eyes. Yes, Your Honor. Every Marine from my 3 units who didn't make it home. I've been carrying their photos and letters for over 50 years. The courtroom went silent. You could hear people sobbing quietly. Bobby held up a black and white photo of a smiling young Marine. This is Danny Reeves from Oklahoma, he said softly. He was 19 when he died. He used to talk about the farm he wanted to buy when he got home. He pulled out another. This is Miguel Santos from New Mexico. He died saving 4 Marines during an attack. His last words were, "Tell my mama I love her." One by one, he showed faces, young, brave, gone too soon. The judge's hands trembled as he looked at the photos. How many stories are you carrying, Bobby? 382? Your Honor, Bobby whispered. Every name, every face, every letter I could save. By now, everyone in the courtroom had tears in their eyes. Even the officers standing in the back were wiping their faces. Judge Caprio knew he wasn't just looking at a man accused of stealing bread. He was looking at a man who had spent his life carrying the memories of others, a walking monument of love, loss, and loyalty. Judge Caprio sat silently for a moment, staring at the collection of memories spread before him. The entire courtroom was still, as if everyone knew they were witnessing something sacred. Then, with a trembling voice, he asked softly, Bobby, how long have you been carrying all of this? Bobby took a slow breath. Over 50 years, Your Honor. Since the day I came back from Vietnam. These are my brothers. I couldn't let them be forgotten. He reached into the bottom of the cart and pulled out a thick, worn notebook wrapped in plastic. The corners were frayed, and the pages were yellowed with time. He held it gently, as though it was made of glass. This is their book, Bobby whispered. Every story I remember. Every letter I could find. Every detail of their lives. I've been writing in it for 53 years. Judge Caprio accepted the notebook with both hands, his eyes soft with awe and respect. As he opened it, you could see the handwriting, uneven, shaky, but full of care. Each page held a story of a young Marine, a name, a dream, a final letter home. The judge turned the pages slowly. His lips parted slightly as he read. You could tell he was struggling to hold back his emotions. Bobby, this is incredible, he said quietly. You've built a memorial that no government, no institution ever created. You did this all by yourself. Bobby smiled sadly. I just wanted their families to know that someone still remembered them. I didn't want them to fade away like dust. Judge Caprio looked up. It says here you've been finding their families? Yes, Your Honor. I've found 216 of them so far, Bobby replied proudly. I travel however I can, walking, hitchhiking, taking buses. Sometimes it takes years, but I find them. I give them their son's last letter, or his medal, or the photo he carried. I tell them how brave he was, that he wasn't alone. The courtroom erupted in tears. Even people who had come for small traffic tickets were sobbing. Some had their hands over their mouths. Others simply bowed their heads. Judge Caprio leaned back in his chair, completely speechless. Bobby, he said at last, you've spent your life serving others, honoring your fallen brothers, while you yourself had nothing. You gave everything you had to those who can't thank you anymore. Bobby nodded slowly. It's the least I could do, Your Honor. They died for this country. The least I can do is carry their memory. Then Judge Caprio asked something that broke the entire courtroom. Bobby, you said you've been homeless for 6 years. Bobby looked down. Yes, sir. Lost my apartment when my disability payments stopped after a computer error. Since then, I've been living on the streets. But I keep my cart close. I protect it like it's my own life. Because those boys, they still need someone to watch over them. The judge's voice grew thick with emotion. You've been a guardian for 382 souls, while the world didn't even give you a home. The silence that followed was heavy, like the entire courtroom was holding its breath. You could almost hear hearts breaking. Judge Caprio rose slowly from his bench and walked around to where Bobby stood. This was his signature move, leaving behind the distance of authority to stand as a fellow human being. He looked Bobby in the eyes and said quietly, Mr. Martinez, you are not a criminal. You are a hero. Bobby's lips trembled. I'm just doing what I promised, Your Honor. I promised them they'd never be forgotten. Judge Caprio gently placed a hand on Bobby's shoulder. And you've kept that promise longer than most people keep anything in their lives. Then the judge did something that no one expected. He slowly removed his judicial robe and placed it over Bobby's shoulders. The courtroom gasped. This robe represents justice, Judge Caprio said firmly. And today, there's no one more deserving of justice than you, Bobby Martinez. Bobby's eyes filled with tears. Your Honor, I don't deserve this. The judge shook his head. You deserve so much more than this. You deserve peace. You deserve a home. You deserve to be honored, not punished. The audience began to clap softly, then louder, until the entire courtroom was filled with thunderous applause. Some people stood up, some cried openly, and others whispered prayers under their breath. Judge Caprio raised his hand to quiet the room. This man, he said, pointing to Bobby, has done more for our fallen heroes than anyone I have ever met. And today, we're going to change his life. He turned back to Bobby. Mr. Martinez, I am dismissing this case completely. You are free to go, but you are not leaving here empty-handed. The judge's voice grew stronger. From this moment, you are appointed as the honorary guardian of military remembrance for this court and this city. What you've done is sacred, and your story deserves to live forever. Bobby looked stunned. His lips quivered, and tears rolled down his weathered face. Thank you, Your Honor, he whispered. Thank you for seeing me. Judge Caprio nodded. You've seen others for 50 years, Bobby. It's time the world finally sees you. And in that moment, the courtroom exploded into applause once again. Not for a judge, not for a defendant, but for humanity itself. The courtroom was still echoing with applause when Judge Caprio raised his hand once again. His eyes, still glistening with emotion, swept across the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, he said softly, what we witness today is not just justice. It is humanity in its purest form. Everyone fell silent again. The cameras kept rolling, and you could feel that something historic was about to happen. Judge Caprio looked at Bobby, who was still trembling under the weight of emotion and disbelief. Mr. Martinez, he said kindly, from this day forward, you will never be homeless again. This court and the entire city of Providence will make sure of that. Bobby's lips parted in shock. Your Honor, what do you mean? The judge smiled gently. It means, Bobby, that the state of Rhode Island will provide you with a permanent home. You've carried the memory of our heroes for half a century. Now, it's our turn to carry you. The crowd gasped. Then, slowly, people began to clap again, this time softer, more emotional. You could see people hugging each other. Even the bailiff, a tough man who had seen everything, was wiping his eyes. But Judge Caprio wasn't done yet. He reached for his phone right there on the bench, something no judge had ever done in open court. He dialed a number and spoke clearly so everyone could hear. General Patterson, this is Judge Frank Caprio in Providence. I have someone you need to meet immediately, a man who has spent 53 years honoring our fallen Marines, alone, without recognition. Can you come to the courtroom today? Everyone held their breath. Within 40 minutes, the courtroom doors opened again. In walked representatives from the Rhode Island National Guard, the Veterans Affairs Office, and even the Marine Corps Reserve Commanding General. Cameras flashed. Reporters rushed in. You could feel the energy shift. This was no longer a local courtroom story. This was history in motion. Judge Caprio rose from his seat. Gentlemen, he said, meet Robert Anthony Martinez, a Marine who never stopped serving. One by one, the military officers approached Bobby and saluted him. You could see the pride and respect in their faces. For the first time in years, Bobby stood tall, returning each salute with shaky but steady hands. A Marine officer stepped forward and spoke. Sir, on behalf of the United States Marine Corps, we thank you for your lifelong service to your brothers in arms. You have kept the spirit of Semper Fidelis alive. The audience erupted into applause again. Bobby's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say, he whispered. I was never looking for thanks. I just wanted them to be remembered. Judge Caprio placed a hand on his shoulder. And that's what makes you a true hero, Bobby. You never wanted recognition, only remembrance. But today, the world recognizes you. Reporters started asking questions. Flashbulbs went off. The story spread across social media before the hearing even ended. People from around the world began to share the live video, commenting things like faith in humanity restored, and Judge Caprio is what justice should look like. But even amid all the chaos, Bobby stayed humble. He looked around, smiling softly through tears, and said, "I never thought I'd live to see this day. I just did what I thought was right." As the media frenzy grew, Judge Caprio raised his voice again. "Let be known," he said firmly, "that compassion is not weakness, it is strength. And this man before us, who once carried the memories of others, will now have his own story carried by the world." Then, in a deeply emotional gesture, the Marine general pinned a medal on Bobby's jacket, a medal of remembrance and honor created especially for him. The courtroom broke into applause once again, louder and longer than before. The old man stood proudly, his shoulders straight despite his age, his eyes shining with gratitude and disbelief. For the first time in years, he felt seen. Judge Caprio smiled warmly. "Bobby, you've carried your brothers for 53 years. From now on, we'll carry you. You're part of our family now." The old veteran nodded slowly, tears slipping down his wrinkled cheeks. "Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for giving me my home back. Not just a place to live, but a place in the world." That moment became one of the most replayed scenes in internet history. It wasn't just a story about a judge and a veteran. It was about what it means to be human, about remembering that even the smallest act of kindness can change someone's entire life. And as Judge Caprio looked out across the room, his voice trembled slightly when he said, "This is why justice must always have a heart." The applause that followed shook the entire courtroom. Reporters called it the moment compassion made history. The video of that courtroom moment spread like wildfire. Within hours, it was everywhere, on news channels, social media, and even international headlines. People couldn't stop watching. They cried, they commented, they shared. Every second of that video, from the moment Bobby lifted the green tarp to the moment Judge Caprio placed his robe over his shoulders, became a symbol of hope for millions around the world. In just 6 hours, the video crossed 5 million views. By the end of the day, it hit 25 million. News anchors called it the most powerful act of compassion ever captured on camera. Major outlets, CNN, BBC, and dozens more, ran the story with headlines like, "Newspaper, Homeless Veterans' Secret Brings Judge to Tears." Newspaper, Judge Caprio redefines justice in viral moment. Newspaper, one man's promise to the fallen moves the world. But the story didn't stop there. Something beautiful began to happen. Messages flooded the courthouse from every corner of the world, from Brazil, Germany, Pakistan, Japan, Australia, the Philippines, people writing things like, "This story restored my faith in humanity. I cried for a man I never met. Heroes still exist." Both of them are in that courtroom. Donations began pouring in, small ones, big ones, from people who said they just wanted to help Bobby keep remembering the forgotten. Within a few days, the Robert Martinez Memorial Fund was established by the Veterans Affairs Office, with the goal of helping homeless veterans, funding memorial projects, and providing support for those suffering in silence. In the first month alone, the fund raised over $8 million. $8 million, all from strangers who were touched by one man's quiet devotion. Families of the fallen Marines started reaching out too. Within a week, over 300 families contacted the court, desperate to meet Bobby, the man who had carried their son's memories for half a century. One of them was Sarah Chris, now 73 years old. She had been the teenage girlfriend of Lance Corporal Danny Reeves, the young Marine Bobby had spoken about in court. When she met Bobby, tears flowed freely. "Danny has been gone for 55 years, she said, her voice trembling. "But you brought him back to me. You gave me a piece of my heart that I thought I'd lost forever." Bobby smiled softly, handing her the photograph Danny used to carry. "He talked about you all the time, Sarah," he said quietly. "He dreamed of buying you that farm in Oklahoma. I promised I'd make sure you knew that." The two embraced, and a photo of that hug went viral too. Millions of people commented things like, "This is what love looks like after war." Bobby's story is a miracle. Judge Caprio changed more than one life that day. Soon, museums began to call. The Smithsonian Institution requested Bobby's notebook and his photo collection for a permanent display at the National Museum of American History. They called it Letters of the Forgotten, the life work of Robert A. Martinez. At the same time, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial and the Marine Corps War Memorial both invited Bobby to special ceremonies honoring his fallen brothers. A few weeks later, Bobby was handed the keys to his new home, a beautiful 3-bedroom house in Providence. One room was for him. The other 2, he turned them into shrines, lined with framed photos, medals, letters, and candles glowing softly at night. People from across the country began visiting the house, calling it the living memorial. Every wall told a story. Every photo carried a soul. When reporters asked Bobby how he felt, he simply said, "I don't feel homeless anymore. I feel surrounded by my family, all 382 of them." Then something even bigger happened. The story reached the White House. President Biden, who understood the pain of loss, personally invited Bobby to Washington, D.C. He called him a living national treasure. In the Oval Office, the president said, "Mr. Martinez, you have done what no monument could ever do. You carried love, memory, and loyalty across decades. You reminded this nation what honor truly means." Bobby stood humbly and replied, "Sir, I never wanted recognition. I just wanted to keep a promise. Every Marine deserves to be remembered." Reporters later said that even the president had tears in his eyes. Months passed, but the wave of kindness didn't fade. Veteran shelters began to receive record donations. Schools held memorial projects in Bobby's name. And across the internet, people started sharing the hashtag #NeverForgottenHeroes, attaching photos of their loved ones who had served. Bobby became a quiet symbol of hope, a reminder that even in a world full of noise, compassion still speaks the loudest. And Judge Frank Caprio? He said in one interview, "I've spent my life trying to make justice human." But that day, Bobby reminded me what real justice feels like. That moment, the kneeling judge, the old Marine, the cart full of memories, became more than just a viral video. It became a message, a reminder that the smallest act of mercy can echo louder than any courtroom sentence. Months turned into years, but the memory of that courtroom day never faded. For millions around the world, it became more than just a viral story. It became a symbol of compassion, justice, and the power of one kind act. Judge Frank Caprio eventually announced his retirement. The news spread quickly, and when the day of his farewell ceremony arrived, people from all over the country gathered to celebrate a man who had turned a courtroom into a place of mercy. At the center of it all sat Bobby Martinez. He wasn't a homeless man anymore. He wasn't just a veteran with a cart full of memories. He was now a symbol of everything Judge Caprio stood for: humanity, honor, and heart. Bobby wore a crisp suit that had been gifted to him by the Marine Corps. On his chest, he proudly displayed the medals he had kept safe for others. But the most important thing he carried was a framed photo, one that showed Judge Caprio kneeling beside his old shopping cart, his head bowed in respect. As the ceremony began, people clapped and cheered for Judge Caprio's decades of service. But when Bobby stood up to speak, the room grew quiet. He took a deep breath and looked out over the crowd. His voice was soft but steady. "Judge Caprio saved my life," Bobby said. "He saw a man where others saw a criminal. He gave me dignity when the world had taken everything from me. And because of him, my brothers, the 382 Marines I carried, will never be forgotten." The audience wiped away tears. Even the judge's family sat still, hanging on every word. Bobby continued, "You see, real justice isn't just about punishment. It's about compassion. It's about seeing the story behind the struggle." Judge Caprio didn't just judge people. He understood them. He turned toward the judge, smiling through tears. "Your Honor, you once told me I was a guardian of remembrance. But the truth is, you're the guardian of humanity. The crowd erupted into applause. People stood, clapping, crying, and shouting his name. Judge Caprio walked up to Bobby, his eyes shining. "Bobby," he said, his voice breaking, "you taught me something that no law book ever could. That compassion is the highest form of justice." He reached out and hugged Bobby tightly. "You're not just part of my courtroom anymore," he said softly. "You're part of my family." The applause lasted for minutes, thunderous, emotional, unforgettable. From that day on, Bobby's home became a place of hope. Veterans, students, families, they all came to see the memorial he built. He would tell them stories, show them the notebook, and remind them, every name here is a life that mattered. Sometimes he'd smile and say, "And that judge, he reminded the world that every heart matters too." Soon, documentaries were made about his life. Schools added his story to their lessons on empathy and service. And every year on Veterans Day, people from around the world lit candles in his honor, calling it the Bobby Martinez Promise. As for Judge Caprio, even in retirement, he continued to speak about compassion. In interviews, he would often say, "Justice isn't just about rules. It's about recognizing the person behind the mistake, the pain behind the crime, the story behind struggle." He always kept a small photo frame on his desk, the one of him kneeling before Bobby's card. Whenever people asked why he kept it there, he would smile gently and say, "Because that's the day I saw what real justice looks like." And somewhere in Providence, inside a quiet house filled with photos and memories, an old Marine would whisper his nightly promise. "You are not forgotten, not one of you." The light in Bobby's window would glow softly into the night, a small flame of remembrance, a reminder that even one person, even one act of kindness can change the world. If this story moved your heart, don't scroll past it. Comment "Justice with Compassion" to honor Judge Caprio and Bobby Martinez. Like this video if you believe kindness still exists in this world. Subscribe for more true stories that prove humanity is still alive, because every view, every comment, every share keeps their legacy burning bright. And remember, justice isn't just about law, it's about love.